Hello and welcome to the Mundane to Magical online summit. My name is Louise Matson and I'm truly blessed to be your host. This summit has been created to assist people to shift their lives from the mundane to the magical, to reclaim the truth of who we truly are and gain the insights from over 25 amazing speakers, experts in their own particular fields of multidimensional living and magic on how to manifest our soul-fueled magical lives. And today I'm really excited to welcome Micheila Sheldan to the show. Micheila is an intuitive channel who has open connection to a variety of guides, master teachers, interdimensional beings, and collectives, including Mary Magdalene, the Pleiadians, and the Council of Light. Micheila channels detailed information about our history, structure, ascension, and transition to fifth dimensional consciousness. Her awakening came through a struggle with debilitating chronic pain. Through her connection to Source and her guides, Micheila completely healed herself, leaving her mainstream life behind to fully pursue her soul's purpose and become a channel. Her mission is to inspire others to fearlessly live their soul's higher purpose and to support lightworkers through a very transitional time in our planet's history. Micheila also believes she's incarnated here at this time as a conduit for lightworkers to identify and activate their collective assignment or signature imprint. She's able to transmit light-coded frequencies and vibrational healings as a vessel for crystalline light through channeled messages and activations. She's currently channeling a book that explains the history behind human creation, the influence of the reptilian race on our planet, and how we will heal and rebirth our collective reality. Micheila is the Executive Director of the Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution, a volunteer organization focused on raising the consciousness of the planet. In this position, Micheila works with volunteers on a variety of projects, ranging from conscious action initiatives and youth programs to the organization's International Expo and magazine. She's also the mother of two very gifted teenage daughters. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the show, Micheila.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, it's really wonderful. I've connected with you and your work through a number of the different summits that you've been doing, and also the Awaken Empowered Expo as well. And I find how you put across information is really clear and easy, for me anyway, to understand and grasp. You know, we're talking about some quite deep concepts, and sometimes they can be quite difficult to really fully engage and integrate into our consciousness. And yet when I listen to you, it just seems to slot into place really, really simply.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's my goal, is to make it easy for everyone, because sometimes, you're right, these topics are so dense, and the languaging even that some of the guides bring in can be pretty, tough to understand. And it's interesting. Sometimes I have, I'll call it, newbies, people that are just starting to awaken, and they come to my material, the channelings, the live channelings I put on YouTube, and they say, I don't understand all the language, but for some reason it feels really familiar to me. I'm drawn, So it is nice to step back from that a little bit and try to put it into more human terms at times, even for myself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I understand from your journey that you weren't always a channel. So just for those people who may not be aware of your work, if you could just explain a little bit of your journey of awakening to, yourself as this multidimensional being who's able to channel other consciousness, that would be great.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's kind of a long story, so I'll try to make it brief. I really have only been in this field of work for the last 8 years. I lived a very mainstream life, very conventional life. I got a marketing degree. I got married, had 2 kids, decided to be a stay-at-home mom, left that corporate world, and actually, after the birth of my second daughter, started to have a battle in my life with chronic pain. And this pain was in my hip, my low back, my leg. And, I was kind of on that Western medicine hamster wheel where every year I was going and getting my new insurance card, trying a new doctor, getting all the tests and the prescriptions and the treatments, the PT. And year after year, losing faith because I was getting worse and worse, to the point where I was having my nerves severed. My nerves were
Mm.
ablated every 6 months. I was on very heavy medication for pain, for numbness, even was prescribed antidepressants. Was washing it down with alcohol, starting at 5 o'clock and then 4 o'clock, and knew something had to change. And, I kind of believe we all come here coded, right, with these opportunities to ascend, and we don't usually like them when they're taking place. They're usually some of our biggest struggles in life are the impetus for us to step in, to this light work that we all find ourselves in the midst of, and that's really what it was for me. The universe just picked me up and dropped me off in a new neighborhood. I made a move across town. And I was in this really cushy place previously where I was immersed in this volunteer world. I was like the PTA vice president, right? I was a soccer mom. I ran the local church social group and the neighborhood group and all this stuff. And I found myself in a neighborhood where I couldn't make any of that stuff work anymore. I was 40 years old. I had to take a really hard look at myself in the mirror. And I knew things had to change. And in this new neighborhood, in this new place that I found myself in, I was exposed to some Eastern philosophy, which I had never been exposed to before. I grew up Catholic, Italian, kind of mainstream middle class. My dad worked for GM here in Detroit, and I chose meditation. Now, not as a spiritual tool, but because I read that it could help me with my pain. And I was looking for anything at this time. I had stopped driving my kids. I was a young mom. I really wanted to do things with my children, get on a bike. I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. So I started this meditation practice solely for physical purpose because I wanted to, minimize these pain levels. And very quickly and easily fell into channeling, which at the time I did not have any clue that that's what it was. But I started to hear voices, and I just thought, wow, my mind's really busy. I'm making this stuff up. I'm not a good meditator. And then I started walking around about my day, just kind of going to the grocery store, places that we normally visit. And I was hearing things. I was having just casual conversations with people at the deli, and picking up on information that I would have to scratch my head later and say, did they really say that to me out loud? Or, did my mind make that up because I didn't respond to them? So I was kind of in this whirlwind of trying to figure out what was going on with me. I felt a little crazy. And I was introduced to a very special guide. Came in like a lightning bolt one day. Actually, it was Christmas Day. I was making a dinner for my family, and I was missing some key ingredients that I needed for this dinner that I didn't usually have in the house. And, searching the pantry, getting really stressed, which at the time, stress was a trigger for me, that if I was stressed, my pain would go up. So if I was stressed, I went straight to meditation, super dedicated. So I told my kids, Mom needs a few minutes, went in my bedroom and went into a deep meditation. And my guide came in, his name is Jacob. He basically said, I am Jacob, like this thunderous male voice, and it shook me. I was open my eyes, looking around the room, and I didn't hear anything else from him that day, but I walked out and found the ingredients that I needed right in front of my eyes. It was a very strange and bizarre occurrence. And at that time I had started to dabble in law of attraction. And I thought, wow, I manifested something into my life, or this Jacob heard me and provided what I needed. And I didn't tell a darn soul. I made this dinner, went about my life, and didn't even bring it up and talk about it until about a year later. But in the midst of that year, I went through this very dramatic transition in my closet, because I certainly wasn't going to be showing up at the local PTA meeting talking about, Jacob. And I had started to contact extraterrestrials, which was kind of funny because I didn't even believe in extraterrestrials until they started talking to me. And my life completely changed. So as this is going on, my whole vibration, right? And, when we channel, our vibration is changing. Yeah. And I started just to change my whole diet. I had healers coming in that were teaching me things. I had books. I just was kind of walking in synchronistically to things that I needed to heal. I got a diagnosis, which I had never had before, that there's an abnormality in my hip joint. Don't know how I got there. Might have been there my whole life. Might have gotten it during childbirth. But it's not something I can fix. It's just something I have to deal with. And I have completely healed all of that pain. I got off my meds. I think I'm in better health now at 50 than I was at that time. And I really just attribute it to not, channeling information and Jacob telling me what to do, but being so aligned with source that I was on this path where it just really was shown to me. It was handed to me so easily. And I'm really so grateful for that time in my life, even though it was such a struggle to be in that pain. It was a good 6 years for me that I was in pain. But it cracked me open to something that I know I've done in other lives and that I was here to do again, and just started this whole, timeline shift. And it was a big one for me to step into this role.
Absolutely. And that, I find a lot of people have that, quite a traumatic experience, whether it's emotional trauma, mental trauma, or an actual physical trauma, that really does kind of spark that shift. I kind of saw mine as the universe nudging me, because I came in knowing who we are and then switched it all off, denied it just to fit into everybody else. And I always feel like I fell down the stairs and was tetraplegic for a week. Now, thankfully, it was only for a week, but I kind of see it as the universe kind of poking me, because I was so off track, so out of alignment with where my spirit, my soul wanted me to be, that it gave me that space to really kind of look at everything. And that was one of the big steps in my shift. But it wasn't until my parents died that I felt free to fully unlock everything and really open myself up to channeling and things again. But it is funny, isn't it, how sometimes these traumatic events really kind of trigger that journey into awakening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I just believe that we come with intentions, and those intentions are coded within us to unveil an experience. And a lot of times what I find in my session work is that we need to walk the human story of what we're here to shift in others, right? So for me, that pain became my awakening to what I was here to offer to humanity. Yes. Because I had been through not only the pain itself, but even on the other side of the awakening, having, it was like the death and rebirth of my life, I lived in a very different world and a very different identity back then than what I do now. And I think that was important for me to have the reference point to do the work that I'm doing now. Yeah. And I see this so many times. Our biggest struggle is typically the most significant story that we're here to create from and share from, it's walking that bridge to that understanding that's the hardest, I think, that I see in humans, because we often like to stay in the story, or the story defines us and becomes our identity, and we can't get into the present beyond when that story happens. And if we can do that, we can really use that energy to support, right, what's happening on the planet right now, which is, I think, why we all go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I notice so many more people are going through it now more than ever. There are such energetic shifts happening on this planet right now that it just seems to be catalyzing this sort of mass awakening, as it were. Because, I mean, looking back on my journey, the times when the universe was nudging me to awaken, I was like, no, it's kind of like there's not enough people yet. There's not enough people yet. Yeah. And it kind of my full awakening and, the death of my parents coincided with this time since 2012, where so many more people are feeling that pull to kind of understand who they are beyond this physical form, beyond the roles that they play, the things that they've identified themselves with the whole life.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Divine time is something that comes up a lot. And 2012 for me was actually when my entire shift happened as well. And I know so many others. But the divine time comes up a lot because a lot of people feel, especially, in their later years, 40s, 50s, 60s, that they wasted so much time that they really should have awakened before they did. Or if they had, they could have made so much more progress. But
Mm.
the guides and beings that I work with are so quick to say that divine time is like an orchestration between us and humanity, right? Just how you said, it wasn't time. There weren't enough that were ready. And I see that in almost every session that I do, where people bring that up, that divine time is either coming or it's now, right?
Mm.
That humanity has become ready to receive or is struggling with something that was needed for you to bring in.
Yeah.
So I feel like, we're always kind of doing exactly what we need to do when we're doing it. Right? And we're quick to judge that sometimes.
No, absolutely. And that was something that I kind of fell into, because I mean I'm 50, and it was very much like, oh my God, I can't believe I've wasted all this time. And
Right.
I kind of had to go down that road for a little bit to come out of the other side again, to kind of go, actually, no, this is perfect, because I had to go through all of the experiences that I've personally been through in my life to have the contrast, between, disempowerment to actually what standing in your sovereignty is like, but also to appreciate, because when I came in, I assumed everybody was like me. And the lesson was, no, it's not. And kind of shutting that down, choosing to shut that down. So now I appreciate being far more than this physical form, and the roles that I play. Whereas before it was just something I took for granted because it was how I came in, kind of thing. And so I think everybody's journey is perfect, and everything really does happen in perfect timing. And okay, part of your journey might be to judge yourself a bit, but allowing yourself to kind of step back and gain that awareness of, well, the realization that no, actually all of those different stages had to happen for me to actually be here now, and now I can offer so much more because of it.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. It's all, it's not all planned. It's all in alignment. It's the way I look at that. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, one of the aspects of the summit is us being able to reclaim our truth. And I know a lot of the clients that I deal with, they say, well, I'm not quite sure what that is. And I can empathize with that to a certain extent, because the realization that I had when I really did commit to kind of the awakening was I'd closed myself off and denied my truth for so long, putting everybody else's truth above my own, everybody else's feelings above my own, that actually there was a journey in itself to actually reconnect with what my truth, how I felt, what gave me joy, what made me me, my individual divine spark, as opposed to somebody else's. So I just wondered if you had any insights into that for people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the common theme right now is self-love, right? I
Mm.
think that's the one thing that we have been directed away from. And I just did a live event. It was like a couple weekends ago, and someone asked, "What is the one thing that we can do right now to progress and ascend ourselves and the planet?" And the answer was self-love.
Yeah.
We think it's selfish to put ourselves first, but the message comes up over and over again that unless we are in a state of joy and fulfillment and peace with ourselves, we can't be of service, because that energy sets the tone
Mm.
for how physical action can then be aligned. And, when we think about it, even when we move into a more, um, alternative type of position, and maybe that's channeling or healing, what I see sometimes is we try to force that through our old ideas or our old programs. We jump into physical action, and we want to take the steps to make it successful the way that we've learned that in the third dimension.
Yeah.
And really, when we do that, we're negating exactly what you're talking about, because we're not here to do something that anyone else has seen before. Right. And when you lose sense of yourself and you don't know what that is, it's typically because what you have within is so, so different than what's out there, that you have to turn that mirror inside. And
Mm.
that's another big program we have running, is that we look outside as the reference point for what we are meant to be and what we are meant to do. And that's a really hard switch to flip, right?
Mm.
When we've been doing that for so long. And so I think that there's something innately in you that comes easy. There's something innately in you that you can't teach, that you, if asked, couldn't share with others from the standpoint of like breaking it down mathematically,
Mm.
and that's the thing to move into, that one thing that just innately comes so well to you and makes you so happy is where all of the good stuff lies, and it takes time, right? I mean, it's hard to say, well, there's one practice or another that you can choose to get into alignment with your truth or your creativity, because we're all so unique. It really just takes a dedicated practice to allow the time to be there. And sometimes we have to uncover so many layers, right, of these identities we've held through time that haven't allowed us to do that, haven't
Yeah.
allowed us to go there. So I think that's really awakening at its best. That's what all of us on the planet are striving for right now. And that's really how things begin to change.
No, absolutely. And it is true that, I mean, a lot of people on this summit have said, have a daily practice or some kind of a practice that you're basically taking time out
Yeah.
of your daily life to give time to yourself. And people, I find, get really caught up in the X, Y, and Z of what exactly that has to look like. But actually, it is, like you say, it's completely individual to each and every person. And it's actually what lights up your heart in that moment. What can you connect to? But I do feel that there's an aspect of discipline, because there, for me personally, my journey has always been one of the ego trying to keep me in that comfort zone of what it knows, and kind of trying to trip me up and sabotage myself. I get into a nice flow of doing a daily practice, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I realized that I'd fallen out of it, and I hadn't even realized that had happened. And it takes that discipline to kind of start it back up again once I've kind of stepped back in. And that has been a journey throughout the awakening process over the last kind of 2 years for me. And it does feel like that in itself is kind of part of the journey to kind of really fully connect with yourself and establish that relationship, to give yourself, honor yourself by giving yourself that time, no matter how it gets to look.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've been bringing in a lot of new material about truth and discernment. And I'm actually launching a live course in a couple of weeks that is just completely focused on that topic. But what's interesting about it is, we have to, at some point in our ascension, begin to trust our own instincts.
Mm.
And in order to do that, I think it's important to take fasts from things that are preset meditations, recorded things, right? Even ancient practices, sometimes we have to bring in the things that resonate most with us, but we have to allow ourselves the space to know when they're not working for us anymore,
Yeah.
or we've taken away from it what we needed and it's time to move on. Because I know with me, my daily practice changes all of the time.
Mm.
And sometimes I don't do a daily practice. There are times in my life that I go through where I'm just more physically focused. Things in my physical life are taking precedent over maybe my morning meditation practice. And I believe those times are actually necessary too, right? Because what I find is we almost ebb and flow through this non-physical, physical journey that we're on. And we get to a certain point in our non-physical energy where our dimension raises, our vibration raises, we're ready to shift our timeline, and things all of a sudden call our attention in physical to allow those shifts to unfold. And as we're there, we're preparing for the next wave or the next phase to come in of that non-physical focus that lifts us up again. So I think it is important to, especially if you fall off the wagon a little bit, to really pay attention to what's been going on in your life and what's been calling you away from that practice, and maybe get in alignment with the fact that that was necessary in this time, right? That was okay for you because it needed to be a part of your reality. And as I allow myself to do that, I'm a little bit more at peace with what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, right? I mean, that's another part of this whole self-love issue, right? We just have this little voice in our head constantly telling us we're not enough, we're not enough, we're not doing enough, we're not connected enough, right? And if we let that little voice take over, we never really get into a groove with what's right for us in the moment, you know? And I'll tell you, this is just a recent thing for me. It was probably a year back. My guides kept telling me, Kundalini yoga, chanting, Kundalini yoga, chanting. I thought, it's not really what I do, but, I'll give it a try. And I just couldn't do it. I kept trying, and like, oh, my guides tell me I should do chanting and Kundalini. Couldn't do it. Walked away from it for a long period of time, and I really just surrendered it. And all of a sudden, it came into my life like a vengeance. And every morning, I've been doing this dedicated Kundalini practice, and it's really easy, like water. And I don't think that often the messages we get are meant to be taken so deliberately. I was thinking, wow, they were really kind of giving me a vision into where I was going, maybe not what I had to do in the moment, because I don't think you can force it, right? I mean, you can't force what you're resistant to. And unless you allow that resistance to, move out of the way, that's when you can really flow with what is. You know?
Yeah, I really like that actually, because I think we do get so caught up in what something is supposed to look like, or we compare ourselves with somebody else, and we see them as a spiritual person, therefore we must be doing that kind of thing.
Right.
It's not necessarily exactly the right thing for us to be doing, and it very much does come down to what feels right in the moment, and really going with that. And I kind of came into this very kind of divine feminine energy in about June to August, where because I've been in corporate, I've been a senior manager, I'm very do, go, 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 and all of this. So that's my natural energy. And then all of a sudden, everything was just like, no, I had no motivation, I had no energy. It was just about being, and this kind of void space, being in this void space. But it kind of felt like being pregnant, waiting for that thing to arrive, but it wasn't ready yet. And I fought against it for a while because of my natural predisposition. And then when I actually surrendered into it and just completely allowed myself to go with that flow, no judgment, it was like, okay, today, this is what's happening, and that's it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was so much easier. And I felt so much more at ease with myself. And then I kind of, looking back, I could see where I then came out of it, where all of that was just creating this space for this creation energy before the actual divine masculine stepped in for the creation to take place. And when it did, it just went super fast. And I was actually glad that I'd had this kind of time out period.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. Yeah. And I think a lot of people on the planet can as well, because I think in the last linear year, 2018, we had a lot of rebirthing period going
Mm.
on. And we've had a lot of people who have been exhausted and adrenal fatigued. And it has a lot to do with all of this influx of new information we have coming in because of what's going on within Gaia. And I had the same thing, right? And I'm a go-getter. I'm a go-getter. And I had to really allow myself to rest. And, the self-talk when you're doing that is pretty harsh because we've grown up in this society, right? Where it's, you keep going until you drop. And it has served me well. I agree. It's been a nice, like slow time, a nice quiet time for me. And as I've come out of it, I have some new ideas. I feel more renewed. My channeling is taking a new turn. And it's important, right? With that ebb and flow, right? Everything goes dormant and then it blooms again. It's necessary.
Absolutely. And it is kind of like getting in alignment with the seasons of your own energy field.
Oh, yeah.
We all have a winter, summer, spring, and autumn.
Right.
And it's not going to be the same for everybody, and it's not going to match the actual seasons of the earth either. It's just, but I was so glad that I did surrender to it and allow that to actually take place, because in doing so I was ready then for when the divine masculine energy kind of surged forth, and I was given this summit to create, and this has been so much work to do. Had I fought against it and kept going, I would not have had the energy to have put into this. And it was a really beautiful lesson for me to actually kind of surrender into the flow, the natural flow of not just my energy, but the earth's energy, because I think it was there for a lot of people at that time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, it's interesting because we have this split of timelines on the earth. And if you followed my work, if anyone out there has followed my work, the guides have brought in a lot of concepts about the third dimension versus the fifth dimension, and the old grid system versus the new grid system. And I really feel like people who are creating timelines in the new grid, which are, just higher vibrational, more conscious types of businesses and tools and, technologies, things like that, are going to start moving pretty fast because it's a quick energy. It's supporting us right now. And it's really, not necessarily, when I say quick, based on time, okay, because I believe you can actually get more accomplished and source more in less time now in this new grid than what you could before. Mm-hmm. But we also have some people who are connected to that third dimension and that old grid. And no judgment here. It's really just a different way of perceiving your planetary experience. But I think that those people are struggling a bit more with things like time, right? And trying to accomplish and source in the way that we've done it before. And that's why we see so much also of this exhaustion, on the flip side of things, not necessarily being because of an energetic shift, but simply because of a over abundant physical type of energy that's in our lives, right? It's like kind of moving through quicksand now when we're in physical. And I get away from your original topic, but I just want to add, what the guides have said is that with this shift, we're all vibrating at the same speed, which is a higher speed. So imagine being someone who's vibrating at a higher speed, who isn't really consciously aware of, all of this conversation, and still trying to push things in physical, right? It's kind of like the physical feels that much harder. It feels that much more dense. It feels that much more slow and difficult. And that's innately, I think, what we're seeing going on in this timeline shift is that difference. So it doesn't surprise me that you took off like a bat out of hell with the masculine energy, because I think that this new grid is really supporting people who are creating timelines within it pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so much has changed over the last 12 months for me in terms of my energetic vibration and things. And I've noticed a difference in the way that I channel.
Yeah.
opened and allowed myself so much more. Whereas before I kind of saw it as, you know, they were out there outside, and I was having a conversation with something outside of me. Now it's about just kind of understanding it and acknowledging that it's kind of flowing through me. More of a deeper sense of knowing rather than a conversation.
Yeah.
um, and that it's so much easier, because whereas before I would have been so exhausted, or I would actually be sweating buckets because the difference in the vibration was so large that it was not an effort, but it took a lot physically out of me to connect. Now it's just like, you know, I'll just stand in front of a video and it's just flowing through. But I have noticed that I've made so many changes physically in my lifestyle, my diet, you know, filtering water, you know, just blessing foods and things like that, and asking it to raise in vibration to be most compatible with my own. Just little things that I've kind of automatically kind of brought through. And I just wondered what your take was on that, because
Yeah.
that just kind of just seemed to surreptitiously happen over a period of time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's happening all over because I do clients all week long and it's the same story. I think there's a couple of different reasons for that. First of all, we have really integrated our higher self technology, which is something that has been foreign to us here on the planet. And higher self is like a collective perspective. So it is kind of like those guides being integrated with us, because when our higher self tool is available and it's connected to the soul, we really just flow more with the Akash. We're able to tap into meaning in a more, well, I'll say in a wider perspective than we could before. So it's like taking all of this available information and dimensional stuff that's coming into the earth and actually being able to apply it. But the other side of this coin is the light body, and
Mm.
that's huge. So one of the most significant messages that the guides have brought in lately is about our physical to light body integration. And so as a channel, when you are traveling through the dimensions and matching, right, a being or a collective, your light body is the activity that's carrying that out. In the time space reality between our physical and light bodies has been really great.
Mm.
So when we bring that information in, it's almost like we had to integrate it physically. And I think that's why we've had, as channels, even so many physical symptoms of exhaustion, right? And you were talking about, you know, the sweating, and, you know, it was more of a process for us in the body, because we had to bring that information back in, which was at a different speed, filter it through our consciousness and spit it out. Where now, because our light bodies are so much closer in proximity to our physical form, it's quicker. It's like butter. It's like water. We don't have that gap in time space. We're actually integrating it in the real time that,
Mm.
you know, we're in the present moment that we're in. So I think that's really contributing to a lot of that. But I mean, our telepathy in general, our extrasensory gifts and abilities, because of the new Schumann frequency within Gaia, have completely amplified. So, like, I noticed for me, my channeling has become far more visceral, especially in the third eye. So, you know, I'm primarily clairaudient. I certainly feel the energy shifts when they come into my body, but visions and things like that have been kind of touch and go, where now it's just a complete and total installed part of my technology. You know, it's like it's kind of come all together, and it's working together. And that's another part of this is all of our extrasensory gifts and tools are beginning to work better in concert with the energy that we have on the planet, which is a huge benefit when you think about it, because we've been so kind of linear in the way we've looked at healing and channeling and right meditation and all of these things, where now it's kind of more multidimensional the way that we are connecting. So across the board, I mean, I'm seeing it across the board. Everybody's kind of upgrading in the way that they connect um, to whatever energy they're, you know, they're connected to.
And I mean, this obviously, I mean, the Earth's energy has shifted massively, and as the Earth's vibration raises and becomes more clarified, it's then automatically affecting our energy field, and you know, in a way, we have to come along on that journey as well, because I personally don't believe that you can vibrate at such a different frequency to the Earth plane that we're on. Now, for those, I mean, one, I think that's probably one of the reasons why there is what feels like this kind of mass awakening, mass consciousness kind of starting, going on. But also, you talk about the changes with the light body, and us, you know, sort of closing that gap on the vibrational frequency. Is that the same for people who at this moment in time are kind of quite unconscious and beginning the awakening journey? Or do you kind of have to gain some level of consciousness for that to happen?
Yeah, and you know, that's the thing. I think that regardless of whether you are conscious of it, it is still a part of your technology. But interesting, the way that it sometimes shows up is in a difficult way. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes people are very empathic, right? They come with that very empathic or telepathic energy where they just take on the emotions of people. And they may have lived their whole life with this, but didn't understand it. And all of a sudden they get it. And when they get it, they can actually direct it, right? It's like consciously directing the technology. And when they do that, they don't suffer so much, because now it's not about this empathy just kind of running willy-nilly in their life and taking on, you know, emotions and density and things from other people without their knowing. They can actually craft some kind of service to humanity through that empathy. It's like taking charge of your consciousness, right? And I think that's the difference between those of us who are more physically, third dimensionally focused or not awakened to these gifts and abilities, and the rest of us who might be ascending really quickly into some new sensitivities and gifts. Is that, again, remember, I think the people in the third dimension, the difference between them and those in the fifth dimension is they're suffering more. And that suffering comes from a lot of different things. But one of those, I think, aspects is that they are more sensitive, and they are obviously having experiences that they're negating. I think when we aren't conscious of our ability to tap into source or guides and beings, a lot of times that happens in dream state for us. Right. And that's a difficult energy for us to accept is real. And I do think they're more empathic. So now we have a group of people who, you know, are in a third dimensional reality that is starting to crumble a little bit and change, and picking up on the fear, right? And the anger and all of that stuff that's going on there. I think it's present. I just think it's not understood and it's not consciously directed. So it is causing a little more disturbance, right? A little more buildup of density, and difficult to deal with for people who don't realize. You know, and to some degree, we all have free will, obviously, to choose the path before us. What the guide said was it was necessary for this entire planet and all humans on it to vibrate at a higher one speed, because it's the impetus for us breaking down hierarchies, right? Where we have all these hierarchical things going on the planet. Now all humans vibrating at the same speed becomes the first energetic step into the coming down of the hierarchies. So I do believe, I know that was a long answer, but I do believe that even those who aren't conscious of it are receiving of it.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, we all do have free will. We all have that choice whether or not to consciously engage in it, or to deny it going on, and to. I mean, I used to kind of see it as I locked it in a box. I locked it in a box and I buried it deep inside myself, and I wasn't going to open it again. But you know, that was a conscious choice that I made. But some people may not be quite as conscious of making that decision.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking we're around about the kind of 45-minute mark, and one other aspect of the Mundane to Magical Summit is around us being able to manifest our soul-fueled magical lives and kind of reconnecting with the magic around us. And I just wondered if you had any guidance or insight for people on how to do that with the most ease and grace.
Yeah, well, the ease and grace part, I'm not sure. I mean, we're human to some degree. We have to understand that we're going to go through times that are difficult. And so I want to bring in a couple messages about this, because I actually just downloaded an entire channeled course called Manifesting in Moments. And it was really about, first, getting present. And we know that concept comes through in so many of our, spiritual teachings. I mean, it's just always present. But what the guides are saying is really humans are still outside of the present moment, like 99.9% of the time. And we're always trying to manifest what is to be, right? Or we're stuck in the past trying to change something that is still bothering us from that dimension. And unless we are present with what is, that which we desire cannot come. And as a matter of fact, we have to meet that present moment in a more vulnerable way. So this was a really big divine feminine energy, and teaching that came through was, we've been taught to suppress our emotion. And it's human nature to go through difficult experience. We were always meant to vibrationally change. We were never meant to stay stagnant. And a lot of us learned that if we don't respond to things that are going on in the present, they might not affect us. We're safe, right? We don't like to show that emotion. We don't like to feel that emotion. And what happens is it gets stuck within us. And we end up filtering our present moment through something that never got expressed in the past. So I think the key to really manifesting or being in that magic space is not only projecting into the future with a vision of what you desire and having that preference to know, right, what you don't want, what you do want, but to be here now in this moment, addressing what is with acceptance and truth and allowing those emotions to express, because emotions are also like a technology, they bring us back into energetic balance. And unless we can be here now, accepting what's going on in our life in the moment, we really don't ground or bring in all of these incredible potentials that we've created that are vibrating in the universe, that are already sourcing for us. And this is also, I think, how we replay karma, and we don't ever move beyond some of the issues or problems in our lives, is that we stay outside of that present moment and we don't allow ourselves to move beyond what was. So yeah, that's in a nutshell the teaching. It's really just getting present and letting presence be the glue between who you were before and what's coming now, and getting in alignment with that presence. One of the best quotes, and I hope I didn't remember this right, that I brought in, if you want your physical body to change, you need to be in acceptance of that body in this moment for the new template to arrive, right? And how many of us are in such resistance of who we are in the moment, and we're trying to manifest something different, that we're in total resistance. We are in a timeline we're creating of the same experience over and over and over again. So the second we let our guard down, we become more vulnerable, self-loving, right, of this body. We have opened the space now, right? Just like I healed my body, that original story we brought in, you've opened the space to allow Source to work for you, to show you the way.
Yeah.
And it's really incredibly beautiful how supported we are and how connected to Source we are. And we try to make it hard. But, present moment is it's a pretty easy practice when we keep catching ourselves. And that's what it takes. It's a constant, catching yourself in the act, paying attention to your thoughts, the way that you communicate with yourself, your body, it's sending a signal. It's sending a signal to the universe. And either that signal is one that's open and ready for a change, or that signal is one that is manifesting the same. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely resonate with that. It's something that I'm still working on, because I'm sure I'm not alone in this. I have suppressed my emotions my whole life, to the point
Yeah.
where I kind of described myself as emotionally numb, because I was empathic. All I felt was the pain, not just from my life, but from everybody around me as well. And it was just too much. And so as a coping mechanism, I just shut everything down. And learning to actually allow those emotions, just, in that moment, just to flow freely, and not being fearful if they're not particularly spiritual emotions that are coming through. And it's like, it's okay, it's love all aspects of who you are and how you are, and allow them to be fully expressed. And it doesn't mean to say that you have to direct it at somebody. You're just allowing it to flow.
Yeah. That's the key. It's consciously expressing the emotion in the moment, but not staying there. That's the tool. That's the thing, right? Sometimes, we might get into a car accident. We might have a tragic experience, and boy, we're going to mourn over that. We're going to be angry about that. It's important to consciously express that emotion, but you know, 3 months later, to still be angry, right? Or to not have expressed that, you know that you are now sending a signal through to the universe that isn't in alignment with what you desire. And that's the key, right? Let those emotions come up to clear the structure, to balance it. And then it allows you to recalibrate back to the next present moment.
Mm. Absolutely. And one thing that I love that you said was, and it's definitely something that I'm aware of, is those doors of opportunity are all around us already.
Yeah.
We've already, by sending our desire out into the field, it's already been created. That those doors of opportunities are there, but it's whether or not we're actually in alignment to be able to access them, perceive them even. That's the difference, and that's the bit that we kind of need to get a handle on. And it is done by allowing yourself to be present, so that you can actually see the opportunities that are there around you. And something else that you said before was that it comes down to our perception of the experience that we're in. And I think those are really key, because we're the ones that control our perception of how we see things that are going on in our lives. And are we is the perception built from all the baggage that we're carrying, or what we've kind of, all the little micro details that we've attached to what we've thrown out into the field ahead of us.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything that we need to source exists in the now. It exists in the present moment. And if we're not there, we certainly will not see it. And our perception is the vibratory tool that allows it to ground. But one thing I will say, one of the most beautiful aspects of the work that I do, that has made such a dramatic impact on me, is when I do sessions for people, the guides will often go into those potentials. And you have so many. So there's just, hundreds, but they're actually vibrating real timelines that are sourcing. And they will bring them into the reading to show people exactly what their potential is, which is always far beyond what our human mind can conceptualize.
Yeah.
We've just been taught to play so small. The guys will say, this is already what's sourcing in your field. This is already what's going on. And it doesn't mean it's going to stay stagnant. It doesn't mean you're going to choose it. It can blend, right? It can cross. You have free will to make it your own. But it is amazing to tap into that energy to see how much good is really going on there already.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I often say to clients, when you put your desires out into the field, keep them as broad brush as you can,
Yeah.
because we limit our possibilities, we limit that potentiality by our conception of what is possible. And it's like when we were small children, everything was possible. We had limitless possibilities of what we could be, what the world was. And it's kind of getting back into that space, before all of that kind of connection to the magic of how life could be and was got kind of shut down by climbing on the treadmill of the daily grind of life, and slipping into the mundane aspect of living.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's this beautiful divine orchestration that goes on when we surrender that to the universe, and it's beyond our expectations. That's what
Mm.
I've noticed. A lot of people will come to me and say, I've been working on manifesting this thing for so long. Why is it not here? But the guides can often show it to these people in so many other forms. That one resource that we expected to show up in that very narrow way has actually already been in our life, in so
Yeah.
many different ways. And so I agree with you. It's important to have that more collective perspective, or that broader scope of understanding in that present moment, to really see what's already there so that you can align with what's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your take on people clearing their karma, clearing the density within their energetic field to create the space?
hmm I do think it's possible. I do think there are healers on the planet who can release density. Clearing karma for me, I don't think is something that is done easily or energetically. I think that we have karma for a purpose, and it's certainly not to suffer. I think that we come with a broad scope intention, and that intention is like a soul theme for us. And sometimes those themes need to play out, as we were talking about, in our
Mm.
human story. And we also, to some degree, accept collective karma, because we are here not only to transmute the experience that we're in linearly, but generations of time on the planet actually come through our energetic field and are played out by us, so that our lineage, our heritage, future generations don't have to replay them
Mm.
out. So I think that it does take a mix. And the guides are always quick to say, right now on the planet, we have to balance physical and non physical. So I think we have to be on the ground in physical, addressing that karma with that more divine, feminine, emotional, spiritual energy than what we've
Mm.
been used to in the past. And I think we have to be able to walk that bridge to understanding that that karma was useful in our lives. It becomes a part of our story. It becomes valuable creative energy through which we serve. And when we start to have that perception, we can meet difficult times in our life with a strength and a faith and a knowing that they're really here on our path for that significant meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the generation that we have on the planet right now of humans came in at a time that wasn't exactly the easiest for us to walk. And, you know, the guys gave me an analogy the other day. They said, you looked down on the earth and you said, I can do that. Like I've done that so many times before. I have so many gifts and abilities. I have the support of my cosmic family. I can do that. But then we get into these bodies and we're like, did I say I was going to do this? It's hard. But what we are walking right now in the karmic energies that we're facing is really literally changing the earth. And I think that's how it's done. It's a mix of non-physical and physical action that has to be taken in order for those patterns to change.
Mm.
The density is a little different. I consider density different than karma. Karma kind of is like soul theme energy playing out through time that we were, I'd say, in the womb of our mother, kind of injected with in our DNA, that we're patterned with, that we carry out. The density is how we build up in our linear timeline reactions to that karma that holds us back in life.
Mm.
So the density is the stuff that I think is easier to move non-physically, but we also need to be able to catch ourselves in the act, right? In these old patterns where we might be repeating something that isn't best served for us or for others. And as we see those patterns, literally just see them, okay? Because people think they have to make huge change in their life in order to overcome these patterns. The second you realize it, the second you see yourself doing it, it has to change.
Yeah.
You don't even have to bring something new in. You don't even have to change it. You've already started this alchemical process of moving that density out of the way. So perception, like you mentioned earlier, is a huge, huge tool for this. The way we perceive our reality can move mountains of density out of our aura, out of our energy fields, simply because we now see our lives differently than what we did before and how we accumulated that density.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say to clients, awareness is the key, because the minute you become aware of something, it becomes a choice rather
Yeah,
than, a habit or a reaction. And it is awareness, but not to beat yourself up if you do fall into playing out that pattern time and time again before, because at the point that you become aware of it, that process of releasing its hold on you and actually releasing and letting go of that energy has already started.
I agree. I think that's the worst kind of density we create, is that terrible self-talk and judgment that we do all of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it just accumulates the most density in our field that we have. And we do it all day long, you know? And so, yeah, have a different thought about that. Be more accepting of who you are. And the second that you do that, you don't match that energy anymore, because just like channeling is an energy match, I feel like density is an energy match.
Mhm.
What we hold in our bodies, we're constantly holding it there because we're matching it in some way. But the second we perceive different, or we think different about ourselves, or whatever that may be, we no longer match the energetic weight of that density. And so it has to move out, it has to shift.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking for about an hour, so this it feels like a good place to close, unless there's something burning that you wanted to bring through before
Wow, we covered a lot. I can't really think of anything.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, we have covered a lot, but it has all been really, really useful and all interconnected in its own way. And I think one of the lovely things that you said, it comes down to kind of self-love. It begins with us just changing our perception. If we can change our perception of ourselves and accept ourselves that much more, then we can actually start changing the world around us just purely by the work that we do within. Because we will shift our density, raise our vibration, and connect more with our higher aspects of being and embody more of our soul self, so that what we actually manifest in the world comes from that energy dynamic rather than something that we've been creating for years and years beforehand.
No question. Right. And you think of it so simply, that love of the self is what we match in
Mm.
every experience we have.
Yeah, that's a really lovely place to finish the conversation on. Thank you so much, Micheila, for being with me today, and for being with our audience. And I'm sure that, I mean, I always trust completely that the perfect message will have come through for the people watching. So it really doesn't matter where people are on their journey, whether you're just starting out, just beginning to awaken, just feeling that pull that, there is more to me than this physical body, the roles that I play, or whether you've been on this journey for a long time. I always feel that the perfect message comes through at the perfect time. So thank you again. And for the audience, look forward to receiving another beautiful interview with somebody tomorrow in your mailbox. And I wish you all a very good night, because it's evening here in the UK. I think it's the afternoon where you are at the minute.
It is. Yeah.
So have a great rest of your day, Micheila, and thanks so much.
Thank you. You too.